And I will go ahead. Yes.
Okay, well, welcome everyone. This is our July 4th. Hey, happy 4th of July meeting of the Hard Science Fiction Zoomers group. And we are so happy and privileged today to have an international cast for this Forey Ackerman Memorial Goodwill Through Science Fiction series of meetings. And we have Layla Goushey? I want to be sure I pronounce your name right, Layla is going to
Layla,
talk
that's right.
primarily about the Iranian young science fiction writer Zoha Kazemi. I hope I'm saying this correctly. And she's also going to give us a bigger overview of Iranian speculative fiction. So I will let Lila take it over. And thank you very much for being here.
All right, thank you. Shall we do a round of introductions or should I
I
go?
think we would have done that before we started
Okay,
recording. So
all right, that's fine. All right, well, thank you for being here today. I am so pleased to be able to give this presentation. I've enjoyed reading Zoha Kazemi's work, and I've taught two of her short stories in my recent world literature class. So what I'll do today is just, I'll give like a very broad overview of Iranian science fiction, speculative fiction actually, and now is the time for me to also mention that I was very fortunate to receive a submission by Emad Aysha of a roundtable interview that he conducted with Iranian speculative fiction writers and graphic novelists, I believe. So I think I put that link in the chat, but Imad, if you'd like to share it again, that's perfectly fine. Um, and so full credit to Imad because I added a couple of slides that I thought would be relevant to this as well. So I'll go through the slides. I know it's always more fun to chat as well as listen. So, if you think I'm going too fast, I will, be happy to circle back once the presentation is over. So here is a photo of Zoha, and I chose this photo. It's a photo of a tile, I guess, what would I call this? Wall decoration in Tbilisi, Georgia. Um, and the reason I chose this one is I also visited Tbilisi and walked past this wall and was astounded that was the same wall. So I have a picture of this too. So just thought that was a fun little personal aside. So a little bit about Zoha, born in Tehran in 1982. She has a Bachelor of Science in Engineering and an MA in English Literature. And so that's where our hard science comes in regard to the hard science of science fiction for Zoha's work. I think it adds an extra wonderful layer of texture when the writer it does have familiarity with some kind of scientific concepts. Although it's not required, I write speculative literature, and I'm definitely not I do definitely do not have a science background. Um, but that's why I wanted to focus on her today as well. She's been writing literary work for about 12 years. She has actually three English editions now. Rainborn, Year of the Tree are two novels, and the third is a short story collection titled Time Rider. She's an award winner. Bestseller is The Juliet Syndrome, which actually I did not feature today. Um, and actually, she is working on a um, a story, The World of the Lollipop People and the Marzan Gate. So maybe Zoha can update us on those later. Maybe former owner of Rama Bookstore in Tehran, but we can ask her about that too later. All right. So, based on the article that Emad just published in my magazine, Ballady Magazine, I pulled these photos just to give kind of an overview introduction to the idea that speculative fiction, fantasy, sci-fi, comics are an emerging uh, genre in Iran. And so I went into the Wayback Machine, found some of the Iranian, took screenshots of some Iranian websites where the groups and organizations, form communities, share information. I translated it into English too on this side. That's also in the interview that Imad published. Um, Sci-fi in Iran actually is credited with beginning earlier in the 19th century, 20th century. What century are we in? um, uh, with a book titled Rustam in the 22nd Century. Um, and so this is a retelling of a mythological figure in Persian culture. Actually, it is not yet translated into English, and so actually, I purchased the Persian version, and I've been slowly using Google Translate to translate the pages and read it. So, big hint to any Persian translators out there, it would be great to have an English translation. I just wanted to add this as well. This is a book. I went ahead and pulled this too, which is a book of mythology of Rustam, the original Persian mythological figure. Okay, and then just to round off that introduction, one of the writers interviewed by Emad mentioned that more or less Iranian science fiction begins with novels like Order of Madmen and Rustam in the 22nd century, and also other short stories. So if you'd like to hang on to the names of those pieces, you can go to the interview to find out more. So just to establish that while, um, it's an emerging genre, there are also are historical precedents for fantasy and sci-fi in Iran. All right, so the first novel published by Zoha in translation was Year of the Tree, and this is actually not so much speculative fiction. It is focused more on a young woman who has to take over care of her brother, who has Down syndrome. What makes it interesting as well, because it is a very good story, she does weave, as it says here, legends of ancestry, mysticism throughout the book. So, um, but one of the main novels I just want to highlight today, written by Zoha, is Rainborn, published in 2020. And this is a story of a world that, because of, I guess, well, not I guess, because of climate change, has flooded. So it's a flooded world. Some things that really caught my attention about it that I loved was that local landmarks of the region are mentioned, such as Mount Ararat. It just helped orient me, pardon the term. Um, it helped position me within the region as I was reading this. So I wasn't thinking, these are people stuck in the Atlantic. No, these are people that are stuck, within the Persian region that has flooded. So I have an excerpt of the chapter. I'll just read maybe the first couple of lines. And the reason I want to do that is because I want to give you a sense of Zoha's work. And also important to note, this was self-translated by Zoha. And so just notice the word choices, the vocabulary. I just find it's just a smooth, wonderful piece of world building. Chapter 1, the boatman, not fully awake, hears the laughter and shouting of children playing in the water at dawn, and the excited skirl of seagulls flying around the harbor to catch the silver fish shining on the surface of the sea. The boatman is used to hearing these sounds in his boat cabin and resists opening his eyes and stepping into another mundane morning. It is the beginning of the short, dry season, and the weary mothers, longing to catch another hour of sleep, send their boys to swim around the harbor. This year, the refugee children of the southern ships have joined the boys and girls of the Oxen Island. Every morning, they step out of their makeshift sheds of the floating Oxen Harbor, swim around the island wall in the filthy ooze of the water to get to the clear area of the main harbor, where they feel safer playing around the boats. They have disturbed boatman's sleep, who is tired of the long journey he had. Pardon me. He opens his eyes in the full darkness of his boat cabin. His passengers had spent the night on the island. They had arrived last evening before sundown, before the Oxen gates had closed. They did ask him to join them, but the boatman was not sure if he could fall asleep on land. He is used to the mild motion of the sea that gently puts him to sleep like a cradle. He didn't give any explanations, just an excuse saying that someone should watch the boat overnight. Just a wonderful opening where we get some really nice world building so that we, smoothly enter this world. But I wanted to compare that to Year of the Tree, just to show Zoha's range in terms of her writing skill. The first chapter of Year of the Tree, a vibration rattles the window panes. Loud music reverberates off the walls of the house, seeming near and then far from you. The world gets smaller and then larger. The door is shaking intensely, both from the pulsating drum and the loud music, and from Parisa beating on it. You turn it up, but you still hear Parisa screaming over the music. You don't answer her. You sway your wide back over your short, fat legs. Your arms swirl in the air, and through your almond-shaped eyes, you see your mom, who arrives along with the guests. You twist and move your plump body. Parisa bangs on the door again, demanding that you turn it off. She begs you to open the door. She's already told you that they would be coming to see the house, but you don't care. It is time to dance now. So, I love the opening of this as well, but I also just want you to note the change of voice, the change of narrator's perspective, and just her talent in being able to switch into characters. Okay, another of her books is Time Rider, a collection of short stories, 9 short stories, published in 2024. And this is where I pulled 2 of the short stories that I featured in my class this past semester. So one of those stories was titled The Silk Road Embrace. And I want to pause here just for a moment for you to also admire this illustration. I will be talking a little bit about illustrators later. But my students really enjoyed this illustration because they were able to both creatively respond to it, just in terms of what they imagined they saw, but also to draw from it just themes from the story. Um, for example, the train of camels reminding us of the Silk Road, the smoking woman, which was pulled from the story, and some thought that these more rectangular pieces represented virtual reality. I'll leave that up to you, or perhaps Zoha could enlighten us on that later. I'll talk a little more about the
Can
illustrator.
I interrupt a minute? Could you indicate if these are available in English or which are?
Yes, this story, The Silk Road Embrace, is available on my Ballady magazine site, and I put a link in the chat for it.
Okay,
Yeah, and if you can't find it, we'll get another one in there before we finish today.
great.
Yeah, and so just briefly, Helia Yazdani is the illustrator of this piece, and we will take a look at her Instagram later. Uh, a graduate from Zohar, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, Art University in Iran, has won multiple awards. Um, okay. So Silk Road Embrace. So Silk Road Embrace, I'll just give a quick summary. No no endings, but it is about a man who repeatedly takes a virtual reality tour because he is infatuated with a figure on the tour. But here I want to highlight Zoha's unreliable narrator, which is how the students perceive the story. So one student mentioned this and said, I find that the story's unreliable narrator is a fun choice since it's far more than just an unreliable narrator. It's a lovesick man who wants a woman and is refusing to let go of the idea of the woman he feels he is in love with. Remember, she's in the virtual world. We have no clue if she wants this. We haven't been given any concrete insights into her own psyche, even through her actions and her words. Or in fact, I'll clarify, he thinks she's in the virtual. He thinks she's only virtual at first. There is a case you can make to her harboring some amount of care for him, and there is a case for her not having any care and just using him for his money. There's a question as to whether Zoha intended to make us feel sympathy for a woman about to be ambushed at her own home by what amounts to a stalker. Although this all gets far more complicated since she also kept track of him on the train, but that could be argued was due to his financial position and not to anything personal. Even her words can't be taken at face value. So ultimately, the point of this is every character Zoha writes has a complex psychology. And so ultimately, the student in this case, and many others said, the fact that both readings have this reading, but she was referring to the other one too, have substantial backing in the text is so much fun. So whatever you think a character's motives are, you can find the backing for that, but sometimes you can also find like another justification. So it's almost like, in real life, you can sort of interpret why someone may have behaved a certain way, but then you know other things about them. It makes you change your mind. So it's just a wonderful, deep story. And the students responded to that. Another one about Silk Road Embrace. One thing that caught me while reading was the question of whether Daria actually exists within virtual reality. At first, she seems almost like a mythological figure who only exists in poetry and not reality. There's a dreamlike quality that blurs the line between reality and imagination. The storytelling technique helps develop characterization by emphasizing that Daria represents Hayu's emotional growth rather than whether he actually experienced one of these in real life. So ultimately, this story, in fact, I'll finish it here. The virtual reality indicates the internal struggles of Hayu, the man, as he desires not just to be in love, but also wants a sense of purpose amidst the disruption of society. Ultimately, the student concluded, oh, well, I'll put this here. The author has fused elements of technology, history, and romance to illustrate that one can find emotional truth through purely imaginative experiences. The author has fused, oh, that's repeated. This shows that both healing and finding motivation begin within oneself through imagination and then become action. One more, in the Silk Road Embrace, Zoha Kazemi explores ideas of cultural identity, migration, memory, and human connection through a story that links the past with the present. All right. I'll come back to that in a moment. Yes, the metaphor of the Silk Road as an embrace is one of the parts of Kazemi's story that really sticks with me. Instead of treating the Silk Road like just an old trade route from history class, Kazemi makes it feel warm and human. Calling cultural exchange an embrace makes the whole idea feel more personal, like it's about people actually connecting instead of just swapping goods. This image also adds a lot to the story's symbolism, turning the Silk Road into a reminder that different cultures and histories are linked in real, meaningful ways. Okay, so much more to say about the story. In fact, the Silk Road Embrace also is set in a dystopia after a nuclear event has happened. And so the virtual reality experience is meant to replicate archival bits of history that otherwise people would not know about. All right, so her other short story that we reviewed is called Isolation. Isolation is a story of people who, again, after a critical event, are having to live in separate cells because their DNA, if they touch each other, they die, essentially. So their DNA has morphed in such a way that people cannot interact. This illustration by Maher Haragatam illustrates it well. And this speaks to a theme that students noticed in this as well. They want to keep us hoping that one day we'll be freed from our isolated glass cells, but it's a lie I know we'll never get out. And what students noticed in this story, it was this overarching they, that even though people were interacting and were in control of their situation as much as they could be, there was still like an overarching something else that was keeping everyone enclosed. This is a very good one, well worth reading. One student who's actually from the region, but not Persian, but he wrote, Isolation is clearly an allegory about COVID-19 and its effects on society after forcing people for their health and safety to be isolated from one another. The contagion of isolation and in the real-life coronavirus pandemic work the same way. At the end, he says, it's also interesting to apply a feminist lens to the story. Saya's character is defiant against powers that are trying to keep her literally in a box. She is the lead on a crucially important research team, and she lives liberated from conservative social mores. She smokes cigarettes, talks freely about sex, including telling Kamran she's had numerous one-night stands, etc. And then her most defiant act, she seeks her own personal fulfillment. Another student said, from a cultural studies perspective, the story made me think about how isolation affects people emotionally and socially, showing how much humans need connection. Pardon me. Comparing Silk Road embrace and isolation, I just pulled a few out. One important idea that connects the Silk Road embrace and isolation is how loneliness can affect people emotionally, even when they are not physically alone. A part that stands out most to me is the fact that virtual reality is truly never enough. And then reading the first two stories, I had the chance to find out many interesting things. One of them is how powerful speculative fiction can be. And this was from another student who's also from close to the region as well. So, so I just thought those were some nice things. There was one I thought was really important to mention. I really was struck by this. A student said, I analyzed this text using a Marxist lens. In the story, guilt is turned into profit. The tour encourages passengers to donate money after viewing the simulations, which allows wealthy people to feel good about themselves without actually changing the system that caused the destruction, a system they likely benefit from. Instead of addressing the root causes, the experience lends emotional relief through consumerism. Using a Marxist lens, this can be seen as capitalism transforming suffering into another product that can be sold and consumed. A real-world parallel can be seen in dark tourism, which I've never heard of before, so this really interested me, where people visit sites of suffering, such as Holocaust museums or places like Chernobyl. These locations are often framed as educational experiences, but they also involve profiting from true tragedy. People pay for tickets, tours, or merchandise. There is an entire local economy based upon the unimaginable suffering of others. This makes no real change. It is an experience made for those wealthy enough to consume history, not those poor enough to be affected by it. So what I just want to point out by mentioning these student responses is how much those two stories inspired creative thinking, deep thinking, philosophical thinking, debates. We had camps on who thought which character was right and not right. So they're wonderful to read. Also, I'm not going to spend as much time on The Hatching. This is also in Ballady magazine, but The Hatching is a story about, I guess, other life forms running wild. That's one way of putting it, and humans interacting with the natural world and their responsibilities and defenses from it at the same time. And so to move on, I just want to mention the illustrators. I feel that we sometimes, when reading a story, don't always think about the illustration that goes with it deeply. But I feel in these cases, both, I always have trouble pronouncing, I'll say Maher, and our other illustrator, Elia Yazdani, who did Silk Road Embrace, are extremely talented. So I want to give a bit of time to them with the interest of also saying, seek even beyond them and seek beyond Zoha's work as well, because there are just rich stories that are being told through speculative fiction. One challenge, though, that we have still is translation, and partly some of that probably is due to the separations, long-time separations between cultures. Also, probably that feeds into our the capitalist way of how which books are determined to be translated and sold. But it's well worth advocating for more of this. So I just want to spend a few moments taking a look at our illustrators' pages. Let's see. Yeah, this is Helia Yazdani. The reason I wanted to bring these up as well is so we could think a little bit not only about the Persian themes that may run through their work, but also the global themes, the Western themes, meeting different audiences through their work. Going to scroll down a bit. Of course, everyone has their own style. I find Helia seems to be more fantastical, maybe young adult. And let's see if I can find this one. I want to see what she wrote. Oh, there we go. Okay. So what does she say? I wish we were really as sexy as people in the world. Yeah. Yeah, just kind of a nice, reminds me of the 60s, this one. Really fun. All right, so I also want to look at, actually, this is Bellany Magazines. Here, let me see if I can get there. Okay, this is Mahor's. And especially, you can see her themes are more for a mature audience. I like that she also is a teaching artist. So she's offering a course an in-person course on summer comics. And, so she has information about that. And you can see in this case, her themes seem to be more within the Persian realm. Let's look at a few others.
What was her name again?
Mahor Horgadam.
Mahor, hold that slide. I can't really copy that fast. Please.
Yeah.
It's very good, the one with the design that looked Art Nouveau.
Yeah. And later down in the list, she has an ode to a dedication to Zoha's work. If I can find that again. But yeah, just giving you an overview of the very prolific work she's done, and maybe you can see some of her progression in style.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, let me see. Oh, here it is. So here is her recommendation for Time Rider. She says 9 stories. They will take you to many places, to the past, to the future, to space, and through time. The thread that connects them all together, love, all kinds of love, old, failed, new, and passionate, wrong. And so she drew illustrations for Time Rider. All right. So coming back, one other point just to mention, I'll go ahead and pull this up as well. Mahur and her significant other published a zine in this anthology called The Bat, the Spider. And what it is, we can link this as well, but it's not speculative so much. I think it's actually true crime, and it's a series on serial killers in Tehran. So that might just be, if you're a comics reader, that might be something to see. Oh, here, let's see, maybe I can get this up. So we can take a quick look at their style. Oh, here it is. It's titled The Bat, the Spider, and the Chest of Angel Feathers. Written by Sada Fahihi and art by Mahur Horgadam. Lettering by Adil-e Telimi. And then it's in black and white, but it's a series about serial killers and their victims. So just, very creative, interesting work being done by so many others I didn't get a chance to mention. I do want to include a page to honor the translators, including Ahmed Almadi, who is with us, who translates English fantasy into Arabic. Isn't that right, Ahmed? But if we did, even though we now have ChatGPT and Google Translate and everything, there is nothing like a human translator who truly understands the emotional complexity of a piece of literature. And so just giving credit to those who translated Zoha's work, and I'm sure many more I didn't get a chance to mention today. All right, so thank you. I'll end there and be happy to go back or include links to anything you'd like me to do. But thank you very much.
Well, I want to thank you for offering all of these new vistas into both the verbal and print, type of fiction, but also these wonderful visuals. And in fact, I think Mahor would be good way down in the future to have her come if she's willing to be a speaker. I was really taken by the breadth and variety of what she's doing. I'd like to have everybody, but she really jumped out at me. So if you have a contact for her, I would love to get in touch and see if she would also like to be a guest speaker.
I've been in brief connected with her, but I'm sure Zoha could.
Yeah, or Zoha maybe could be my introducer. It often helps to have someone introduce and say, yeah, they really meet and it's really something. Okay, so this was so much new information for some of us, not all of us. I wonder what questions we'll have. Any questions or comments? I can make one fast one. Oh, go ahead. Who is this?
This is Matthias.
Hi, Matthias.
Speaking from Doha, Qatar. It was a wonderful, wonderful presentation. Do you hear me?
Yes. Now you're coming in strong.
Okay, perfect. I was wondering to what extent you would describe this literature as feminist.
I would say overall, yes. Not with an overt theme, such as you're not going into a story saying, I recognize this as feminist. It's just through the subtle details of characters and how the characters are behaving. It could be read that way. And that's actually, you know, the discussions we have in literature courses. You know, there are many frameworks in how to just how to read literature, how to consider. For example, one of my students mentioned a feminist perspective. Another mentioned a Marxist perspective. You know, and it's possible Zoha didn't intentionally sit there and say, I'm going to write a Marxist perspective story. Maybe it didn't enter her mind at all. But these are things that enter the minds of readers too, you know. But that being said, I would say that there are characters who definitely demonstrate their efficacy in the world and their unique quirks and bad habits and faults. So yeah, I would say yes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you so much for that starter question, because I also have a question and I don't know how to put this. I have to be very diplomatic because there are differences from where we're coming from in a Western European, UK, US, Canada, Australia perspective, and the rest of the world. So, very large are some questions of gender identity, and these are not even coming in. But what I'm trying to say is you can't do everything all at once. And I think it's truly unfair to expect people to jump on board. And these are the notes that Western writers are all consumed with, shall we say, some of these. So how would you address that, Lila? Isn't it true you can't do everything all at once, right?
I'll say in general, no, you can't do everything all at once. And I'll be, you know, for the two stories I've focused on most and read the most, I have not found a character where I question the gender or the sexuality. That doesn't mean they're not in other stories of Zohas, though. But in general, just like everything else, I also think it comes down to subtleties. Because one critique right now of, you know, contemporary literature is that, you know, someone might say, I read the first page and I can tell this story has an agenda, you know,
Mhm.
and people will get their back up if it's not their political agenda, you know. And in fact, you'll see readers saying, I only want to read this kind of story. And that's fine, you know.
Right.
Um, and so, you know, I fully support that. Write whatever story you want to write, put whatever character you want to put in there. And even across, you know, more in diaspora spaces, you will find more writing. Now I'm more back in the Arab American uh, side of things. You'll definitely find a lot more of that type of, you know, LGBT literature or having maybe you know, whatever story it is, it might have a character where they're questioning their sexuality or something like that. Um, but ultimately, it comes down to the writer and the reader. What story do you want to write? And the readers will find you. Write the story you want to write, and the readers will find you. And so I just can't comment more on all of the stories because I haven't considered that much. You know, is this character, you know, is this character who I think it is, you know? And maybe Zoha can discuss that herself as well. But those are just in general my thoughts.
Oh, I agree. I
It's a
agree.
range.
I agree. And I was an English major, and we're still debating whether you're familiar with Willa Cather. Willa
Yes,
Cather, the American writer, and she was so subtle. If it was there, people will spend oceans of ink trying to decide because she didn't want that to be her major point.
right. Yeah, especially works from, you know, earlier in last century, you'll find subtle details you'll come to know the writer more, which can also help you understand a little bit more about their literature. In fact, I think it's important if you're really interested in literature. It's not enough just to read the book. You do need to know the history of the writer as well. And sometimes you put those together, sometimes you separate those. Either one is fine. But I find it very helpful sometimes to discuss that. And that gets into the whole thing about death of the author. Do we even consider the author when we're reading or not? As a teacher, I think, yes, find out about the author, and thus you may understand the characters better as well.
I'm just typing into the notes about my Antonia, because that's where Willa Cather used a male narrator who was fascinated with the immigrant Antonia. So, but she didn't. I don't know. Isn't a woman allowed to write with a male narrator without it being indicative of her proclivities? That's what I'm getting at. So,
yeah.
Okay. Well, other observations or questions for our two wonderfully informed and prodigiously talented guests? I have one more thing I want to get out of Notepad about translations, if you don't mind, because it's just about translations, and I'm gonna try to, with my old funky thing here, see if I can put it in chat. And because it is important, and because I'm working with the theater company who, I hope it will come out. Yeah, there we go. And now you should be able to see it. There may be some typos. Come on, post. Okay, for 70 years, this is a very historic play in science fiction. It introduced the word robot, R-U-R. We did not have the word robot before this play. Okay, so if you're following so far. However, for 70 years, it was a terrible translation from the Czech. So people judged it. The Nobel Prize Committee judged it on that. And now there is a native speaker who has come up with a far better translation, and our little players group, Planet Zoom players. So I just want to say that the difference in translation can be what Mark Twain said, the difference between lightning and a lightning bug. So, if you get that one. All right.
Yeah.
And so my hat's off to every translator and it's very, it's not paid well often, and they're doing it out of love, a lot of these translators. So my hat's off, the good ones. All right, so who else has Starlit Swan? I see your hand.
Yeah.
Starlit, are you there? There you
Hi.
are.
Zoha made a comment on the chat that she could explain about the feminism in her stories.
Sure.
I would love to hear what she has to say.
Yes, please do, Zoha.
Okay, first of all, I want to thank you, Layla, for this beautiful presentation. Really loved it. Really love to know what your students said about the stories. Thank you for that. So, I'm not going to go into feminism as theory. I'm going to look at it from a writer's perspective, what we want to do when we're talking about women or minorities or marginalized people. So, there are different ways of bringing in these voices and representing, people who are marginalized. One way would be a sort of direct representation or showing their struggles or their problems or what they're going through. I have some of these kind of stories. The last story of Time Rider, for example, is about a mother. She's struggling with poverty and she's finding it very difficult to buy oxygen for her son, and it's like a annual celebration, and like I'm going deeper into labor and poverty and womanhood and being a mother. Sometimes the theme, the theme of the story lies heavily on feminism or on women or people of different classes. But sometimes they come in different layers of the story. I also have like a novel. It's called Humanoid. Humanoid is not translated into English. It does have a lot of queer, LGBTQ, transgender characters. It's a lot of those, but they are done in a very subtle way. So because if you bring in these kind of things in Persian literature, it's going to be censored. Censorship is very strong when it comes to LGBTQ characters, when it comes to sexual scenes and stuff like that. The Silk Road Embrace was not ever written in Persian. It cannot ever be translated and published in Iran. That's one thing I wanted to say. I have written some stories with LGBTQ characters, but they cannot ever be published back in Iran. So that's a huge problem there. So we have to do it in a very subtle way. It's not something we can do like indirectly. And also, I personally think about women as not just being victims of their situations. I think about women as characters that can be strong, that can take control, that can think about their own desires and fulfillment. And that's the angle I usually want to explore in my writing. So like in Isolation, as Layla mentioned, Saya is a very strong character. She's a scientist, but she also has desires. She also has things that she wants to achieve. And these are like emotional things that she wants to kind of, have for herself. And she goes for it. Like she doesn't wait for people to give her permission. She doesn't do this. She takes matters into her own hand, even though she might be making a mistake. So like, I'm not trying to victimize women in my writing. I do have women victims also, like in Time Rider, there are characters that are there's a story about a woman that's being abused by her husband, and it's and it's on a spaceship. I think the story is called Exhalation or something like that. In Exhale, perhaps that's the translation. So that's also about like a woman that's being abused by her husband, and she also tries to help herself, but she kind of it ends up in a tragedy. She gets killed by her husband at the end. So there are so many different ways of approaching feminism and writing female characters, LGBTQ characters, and I've tried to do them as much as possible. And it's not just because I felt I had to do it. It's because they're always part of the story. Human experience is layered. You always have some kind of love and emotion. You always have some kind of action. You always have some kind of class distinction and classifications. And all of these layers come into the story, whether you wanted to or not. It's about where you put the focus on. Sometimes I do put the focus on the women, on the class disputes. Sometimes they kind of they're there, but they're in a deeper layer of the story. I don't know if that answered the questions, but I do have I am considered as a feminist writer back in Iran, and also my non-speculative writing. And they're very feminist writings. Beginning of the Cold Season, that's my first book. It goes into the inner struggles of a mother that just she has a like 3-year-old baby, and she's going through a lot of emotions. That's a very feminist story. Another one I have is Sinshin. That's also about a woman going through some really dark depression. That she's struggling with depression. She's struggling with her husband, with her ex boyfriend that she never got to be with. So I do have those kind of stories. But when I moved into speculative fiction, they become somehow part of the world. They don't become a direct focus, not in all the stories. I hope that answers some of the questions. I'm happy to explain more.
I have another
That's
question.
wonderful.
I have
Yeah.
another question coming from the science part because we are, and I'm so glad that you have this background. Is it in engineering? Was that your degree? Okay. My husband is here and he is an astronomer. So I am very curious because you're coming from a background of engineering as well as literature. When does that come to the fore and how do you use that?
So, my stories are not really hard science fiction. I wouldn't put them as hard sci-fi. I don't do space operas or very, I don't know, very hard sci-fi, cyberpunk kind of thing. But my background is in material engineering, and I do have a lot of references from what I learned throughout my undergrad studies and you should also know that I'm a writer that I started writing before the internet was a huge thing and you had access to data everywhere and you could Google everything and ask ChatGPT, what is this and what is that? So I was able to read papers and journals and books on scientific information as backgrounds to my stories. Some of the technologies that I really worked on, one of them is stem cell technology in humanoid. That's a very important thing that kind of takes over the world building. The world is based on stem cell technology, so people don't die. They can reproduce different parts of their organs, and they can kind of replace any organ that's failing, and they can reproduce any body parts that is kind of deteriorating, and that kind of gives them sort of immortality. They're not 100% immortal, but they're able to live a very long life, and that kind of creates the whole situation in this story. Also, in Juliet syndrome, that's also another thing that happens. So, like, people are not able to fall in love anymore. They're not able to they don't have the hormones anymore to feel love or desire or reproduce at all. So that kind of goes into the whole industry of medicine and medical treatments and psychological treatments and stuff like that. So that's the kind of scientific aspect you see in my stories. Mostly I think it's material engineering and that kind of science.
Well, that's fantastic because that's what RUR is about, that they're no longer having kids because of the robots, that they've kind of taken away the desire to reproduce the way people have reproduced. Now, you say that you use some of your technology in the stem cell thing. Now, which novel or short story is it where people don't die and they're replacing things? Is that in more than one of your stories? Is it a
No,
world?
it's humanoid. I'm gonna write it here, but it has not been translated.
Oh, okay.
So
All right.
um the thing is the translation aspect is it's very expensive. We don't have people who can translate easily from Persian to English. The other way around is much easier. And to be honest, it's not just about the translation. It's really hard to find publishers outside of Iran who are interested in our stories. I do send my stories to, I don't know, contests or speculative magazines, and they get rejected within like 24 hours, 48 hours. I feel like whenever they see that there's an Iranian person writing it, if there's a Persian thing, it kind of people are not comfortable with writing stories from the Middle East, especially right now. There's a big
Right.
war going on, and nobody knows who's who and what's going on. Um, the affiliations seem to matter a lot. So I think the world is very skeptic about our literature. So investing a lot of money in translation and not being able to find a publisher outside is very risky. And nobody really does that. And
I'm glad
I
you're
think most
speaking to
people,
this. Good. Tell people about this. They don't realize this.
I don't think they care. So,
I
well,
know.
I've been
And
talking
I
about this for
encountered
some
this.
time.
I
I think
encountered this
Emad
myself.
also has talked about this a lot. I mean, we've been looking for publishers for a long time. We're looking for agents, publishers, anything. It's very difficult to find.
Well, you know what I was told, you know what Tor Books is? That's one of the biggest publishers. And we have a senior editor here in Tucson. And we tried to put together Planet Europa SF, and it was just Eastern and Western Europe, you know, but people from Albania and places that aren't usual. I thought, wow, they're going to love this because we have 22 countries. I showed it to this woman, and it took 5 years to get them together. She said, oh, that's like poison. Nobody wants short stories, and they especially don't want translated short stories. So it's not just Iran. I want to make that point too. It is Iran, but they have a terrible time across Europe, especially the Eastern ones. They said things have to be taken up here in the US. Here's what Christian Thomas, he was the guy who had Planet Europa, and that was the name of the main website for all Europe. They would put up the convention news and everything. He said it's like the US is a neutron star. We have to be sucked up into the US and translated to English because many of us don't even speak Albanian or each other's languages. And then once it's in English, we get to know about each other. It bounces back to us. But he called the US a neutron star. So what you have going on is not unique, although it is extreme right now because of the fighting. People should understand that when you're ethnocentric, as science fiction has become, they don't want anybody's stuff from anywhere else other than Western, especially US and UK. Okay. I see Lila has her hand up first. Go ahead, Lila.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to follow up and ask, Zoha, can you speak to the idea of self-translation and why that might sometimes be difficult?
Yeah, self-translation is not actually translation. It's like writing the story for the second time in another language, like rethinking the story in another context. It's very difficult. It's like you know what you want to say, and then you have to look at it from a different perspective and change the whole, like, every language is a system of thought and system of thinking. So like changing a story from this language to another, it becomes very difficult because you know exactly where that belongs in the original language. Now you're changing it. Sometimes I have to kind of rearrange sentences, even rearrange paragraphs to make it make sense because I know it's not going to look good in English, for example, if it's arranged this way. Sometimes I let go of some expressions that I have in Persian or the other way around. It depends on what I'm doing, what sits best with that language and with that thought system. And the reason I kind of do this is because, as I said, the problem with translators, I do have a translator who's been working with me, Amir Sepahram. He's also translating from English to Persian, and he's also helping me with some of the translations. It's much easier for me to read his translation and kind of edit that because now I don't feel responsible for the language. I don't feel responsible for many things. It's his translation. It's his language, my idea, my writing, but his language, which is much easier. But it's a very complicated thing. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of energy. But I'm happy that I've done this like a few times. At least I get a chance to talk to you people about it. I see that a lot of people are writing in Iran. We have an amazing writer, Behzad Qadimi. He's amazing. I mean, his writing is just absolutely fantastic, but it's very hard to translate his Persian to English. He has a very sophisticated language, very complex kind of rhetorical things that he uses in his writing. And so no one has ever taken up his work for translation, and nobody really knows about him. I think he might be even a better writer than I am. So this is a problem we have. So whoever has access might be able to kind of speak and kind of present themselves, and a lot of people don't have that access. I'm really hoping that somehow this would be solved throughout.
Could I ask Ida to say what she's put in the chat? This is important for you, Zoha. Could you tell that to Zoha about where she might go.
Oh, thank you. I think Starlet had their hand up
Yes,
first.
yes, I was gonna get to her next. She'll be
Okay.
next. She's
Okay.
not ignored.
Just if you're not, Zoha, I don't know how much you've interacted with the IAFA that's putting on the conference that you're guest of honoring in, but they have an international fantastic division. Every year they have a contest of best work of fantastic genre scholarship in another language. So they do have people who translate, because I've been the judge of that, and other people have. And the editors, the last couple of issues have been very good about mixing genre, not just having your standard peer-reviewed academic article or essays, but also they've mixed poetry and occasionally fiction. So I don't know. I just thought that might be a good venue. And if you want to, I can ask about it, but it seems like you're also already in touch with whoever's doing it. Anyway, just a thought. If the sold version is hard to sell. I don't know if they'd be able to pay you for it, but maybe free translation service and
Sure.
exposure would be,
I'm
to the
sure
large
she'll
organization.
follow up on this. I'm
Yeah.
sure she will. And
Yeah.
one other thing to consider is that RUR translation came out by MIT. So if you have things that are scientific, go to the presses like MIT. Okay, Starlet, you're up.
Sorry, but Emad, he had his hand up first.
Okay.
Yeah, I was doing it physically. I'm still not good enough with the
Okay, well, go ahead, Emad. You go first, then Starlet.
author I know, Arabic author who's non-binary, and most of his stories are LGBT stories. He had problems getting published to the point that he had to change his name, so they didn't know it was the same guy.
Wow.
And he told me there's a lot of racism out there, and
In the
and
US.
there's and also very ideologically obstinate people. Even if you're left wing, you can never be too left wing for these people.
In the US.
Yeah,
Right? Speaking of the US, the publishing industry in the US.
And online particularly.
Okay.
Another quick point about translation. Getting a translation published is also difficult, but pointers for helping you with translation is to alter the tone of you don't use a single tone throughout the whole text. And particularly when it comes to relying on formal English compared to colloquial English. Of course, there's a difference when somebody is talking to a friend or their slang and compared to the actual narrative, which can be epic. Ahmed al-Mahdi's Malaz, which is my first big translation, and I'm still very proud of it. That's specifically what we did when we have characters talking or friends. You have slang, you have colloquial English, but the rest of the text, the narrative, has to be this kind of epic classical English because it's a post-apocalyptic steampunk, and it's done in a epic. It's using a format for epic stories, folk tales, and Arabic history. Ahmed knows this, of course, much more. He's the author. He knows how it. Another thing is 2063 and other stories we just published recently, last year, for Mu'taz Hassanin's dystopian, and luckily he writes in a very grimy and slang. Yeah, I put the link up.
Okay, because poor Starlet is there and she's been waiting.
Yeah, okay. So that's just the 2 quick points I wanted to say.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
I want to say 2 things and ask a question. One is that I translate my own work into Spanish, or I write it in Spanish and then into English. So either way, I'm translating. And there is the thing that you cannot translate it straight. You have to translate for the message that you want the reader to get. Like an example would be in English, we say it is raining cats and dogs. But in Spanish, that would make no sense. But in Spanish, we have a saying that is, está lloviendo a cántaros. It is raining basis. And that makes no sense in English. But you have to translate to the message, not word by word. And so I understand what you're talking about. It is like rewriting the story again. I know what you mean. The other thing that I want to say is that I love comics. And I did not know that there were comics in Iran. Sorry for showing my ignorance, but I thought that in a Muslim uh, country, it wouldn't be allowed. Is how wrong am how ignorant am I right now? But please, if you would explain so I can stop being ignorant.
So we do have comic artists, we do have artists. A lot of things are done underground, but comic publishing is something that's been done for many years. It's not necessarily black market or anything because it's a very expensive industry, as you know, publishing a lot of print pages of colored print things. And so we talked about Mahur and Sadaf. Mahur and Sadaf are working together for many years. Sadaf is the writer, Mahur is the artist, and they're creating um, comics. I think that their first comic that came out also won an award by the government in Iran. So the government is not against it. So the government is what they actually want to do is they want to have some kind of control over the material that's being published. They also do use comic as a means for their own propaganda whenever they want to, publishing, hiring artists and writers to write for them and create comics that would kind of promote their ideology and stuff like that. So it's not illegal. It's actually been used in two different ways. Independent writers and artists, and also the ones hired by the government. No, illustration is not forbidden. The only thing is that if you are showing a woman, even if it's a drawing, you have to cover their hair. And that's the problem I had. I wish I could show you the art that Mahur created for my book, The Merzan Gate. And we waited for like about 2 years for the Ministry of Culture and Censorship to kind of give us permission to publish the cover. And by the end, they did not give us the permission because the hair was showing, it's a picture, it's like a comic picture, but you can see the hair of the character from her scarf. And they said you had to cover the whole hair. And I didn't want to do that. You can see it on my Instagram. If you check my Instagram page, you can see pictures of Mersan Gate. So we went with a completely different book cover. It doesn't even have a character in it. It's just a very boring kind of cover because they didn't let us use the pictures created by Mahur. They didn't, the character was not wearing her hijab properly, so that was a problem. So we do have comics, but it has to be in line with the with what they want to show of women. You cannot show them with their full hair. You cannot have like I don't know, clothes that are not appropriate for yeah. So you have to kind of if you go to yeah, you can see the Merzan picture. It's the two characters, the one with holding a book, and there's like yeah, that one. So this was not this didn't get permission to be published because of the hair of the girl showing. They said this is not appropriate. So we had to this is also done by Mahur. The illustration is by her. These are the characters, the woman and the um the artist in my story. And yeah, they said they said the skirt is too short, the hair is showing, you have to cover the hair, and then you have to cover the woman's bosom because you can actually see her curls and stuff. This is how they treat pictures in comics.
Wow. I have to say that sadly, I have a little, I had an interaction with Iran. I had a poem that was made into an animation, and it was submitted to a contest in Iran. And to my surprise, it was taken, it was picked up, and we actually won an award. But the thing is that the woman was naked and her hair was not covered either throughout the whole animation. Uh, the curious thing about it was that we ordered to get the awards, the statues, and we never received them because the next thing we knew is that the government had taken over that contest, and some of the people had gotten arrested, some got killed, and the ones that were left, they had to do only whatever the government said that has to do. We did get our award, it was not rescinded, but even the name of the contest, everything got changed. So what you're doing, you're so brave. You are so brave. I just wanted to say that.
Thank
Okay.
you, Scarlett. I really appreciate that. Yes, this is something that happens a lot. I won an award for Time Rider a few years back, and they said that I cannot receive the award because I had a photo on Instagram and my hair was not covered. I was wearing a hoodie, and so that was the reason they never gave me the award. And so
Wow.
the editor said, if you're not giving it to the winner, we're not going to announce the winners at all. So that award was kind of pushed out completely. So I understand what you're saying, but we have to work around these things, the problems of censorship, the red lines, whether it's with pictures, whether it's with words and like scenes in the story. We kind of learn how to write the stories, having everything in it without directly mentioning so many things. And that, as I explained in the feminism section, you find ways to kind of show things without saying them, like, showing what's going on around it so as it exists, but it's not directly in there. Sorry.
I actually think sometimes that can make for a better story, the showing, not telling. So you actually, you come to know the character just as you do a human being, as you're observing their details and their mannerisms and quirks. But there's a place for everything too, you know.
Well, we're getting to sort of where, I don't know, are there any other, Emad, are you still here, Emad? Emad's still here.
Yes,
Yeah,
I'm here.
Okay, Emad, I'm sorry, where I let Starlet in, I'm so embarrassed. It sounded like I was cutting you off, and I'm
Okay.
truly apologetic. So did you have anything else you want to share with us?
We need to get more Iranian science fiction translated into Arabic and vice versa. And Ahmed is doing that a little bit on Facebook with Mr. Iraj. Faisal Bakhshish has translated some of his short stories, very short stories, like microfiction. But we need, there is a market here in Egypt for, certainly for Iranian cinema, and there's a growing market for translated science fiction. It's still mostly English, but I came across some anthologies for Turkish science fiction, And I've been trying to get Rainborn published here in Egypt. I've been trying to find a publisher at the Cairo International Book Fair, but it doesn't go very far, sadly.
Well, I think these are invaluable tips from people right there on the ground, about these markets. I wish I had had more confidence and advice when I tried to put together that Planet Europa SF. And I feel very bad. I spent 5 years collecting, and then someone just said, oh, no, we don't do that. We don't care about translated short stories. In other words, it didn't matter how good they were. And I think this is coming from the United States where I am. I remember when Darko Suvin, do you all know who Darko Suvin is? Or he's still alive. He introduced science fiction into academia. It was not respectable or studied until he theorized it. And anyway, he did one of these other seas, other oceans translations in the late 1960s. And there was a period where it seemed we couldn't get enough of them. I don't know who was here in the States during that long ago, but in the 70s, it was very popular. And it seemed like people were putting out books of at least Eastern, Western Europeans, starting to bring in other cultures and regions of the world. And it all dried up. And I'm just wondering, somebody could write a study on that. When did it all dry up? Was it totally coincidental with the political climate here, or is it independent? What do you think, Emad? You have a good feel for marketing.
I think it's the collective shock of social media. Everybody's trying to figure out what is it that's going to be popular online, and they don't want to take risks. I've had lots of people, when I send stories to websites, a lot of the time people respond well. So I like your style of writing. Maybe you'd want to try this magazine out. So a lot of people do actually like my stories, my quirky style of writing. It's just they feel that it's not appropriate for their marketing strategy. They don't say that, but you can tell that that's what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
We still haven't completely absorbed the social media juggernaut into our publishing.
But what about the big
mindset?
What about Tor? I mean, there's still a big big publishing houses, Tor, and there's a couple others. Are they affected by that, or is it just the climate of people won't read things from other countries?
Now that's more the people won't read things from other countries. That's
Okay.
the legacy publishing.
Uh-huh.
When from Malaise, we had friends in America, university professors who specialize in translation and Middle Eastern literature, Arabic literature, helping us trying to get it to introduce it to mainstream publishers, and it just didn't work. And these were established names.
Okay.
Blaise Ward, a guy online who's a SF writer himself, he's the guy who finally rescued us. And 2063, I tried publishing the first chapter of that on a website which specializes in radical literature, and it's for free, not going to get paid, and they still wouldn't do it. And these are the sort of the left-wing guys. And this is a dystopian novel.
So when you say left-wing publishers, I just want to help our audience to really pinpoint for saving time where they don't need to go to or whatever. So these are people who have a political agenda in their online publishing service or little zine up online. And are they that numerous and that influential?
I would think yes. From my friend, there's the non-binary guy said, yeah, there's a lot of publishing. I mean, it's a lot of online publishers, and they're very ideological, and a lot of them are disguised racist. Even if you're left wing and LGBT, you're still not left wing enough for them. You have to change this term and not use that term, things like that.
Well, that's what I've encountered, that there's so many terms, and I was barred from a space on campus here because I misidentified someone or I didn't look at her the right way, about pronouns. You know what I mean by pronouns.
Yeah.
So, okay, so there is, people will put their own, I guess maybe it's broader than that because theater companies are like that. And there's one theater company in town that only does classic plays with very big, posh reputations or Irish, and try to get anything else done by them. So maybe part of it is just that they're not only racist, but they may be, just their own thing. And if it's a very small online publisher, you'd have to find one who's aligned with you. But that's a real problem. I call it atomization of publishing. It was hard because when you had a few publishing houses, most people couldn't get in. But now there's a zillion of them, and nobody's you have small readerships for most of them.
That's true in academic, writing in political science and things like that. Lots of lefty liberal magazines and journals either don't publish you or they do publish you for a while and they just stop. And I have Marxist friends who complain to me about these guys. They're sort of kind of excessive victimhood. We're the victims, so we should only publish ourselves. We owe it to ourselves. Nobody else can agree with us, even if they have the same ideas as us. In some cases, they steal the ideas of other people. I know a Marxist guy tried getting published an article, then the same magazine published an article saying essentially the same thing as what he said, a radical thing. On again to do with Middle East politics and oil economics and that kind of thing. He's way ahead of them. And they'd originally turned him down, and then they published the same theory just with a different guy's name.
Well, I know this is not exactly about our writer, but I think she will benefit too from knowing this. Zoha, don't you agree? I think you'd benefit from knowing some of this, what's going on in this whole world of publishing, because there is no guide. It changes. It's a dynamic system. So the minute you give a guide, then things will change. The few that were doing it this week have dropped out, and you have a new cast of characters putting out these. So that's what happened to me. I got caught in this, I don't know, limbo of people. One guy in Romania had a small publishing, and he swore to me he'd publish our Planet Europa, and then he disappeared, or he never got back. So, it was weird. I was telling everybody, oh, good, we're going to be published. He swears he's going to do it. So it's an uncertain world. And I think don't you agree, more people are being read than ever before, but it isn't like in a big audience the way when you had Tor and a few publishing houses doing all of science fiction. You could get a huge audience reading your work. Do you agree?
Still, Tor and these big publishers are being read more than the others. It's all about being able to kind of promote the work and advertise it. It's very difficult for indie publishers or self-published books or small publishers, well, whoever they are, to kind of produce commercials and advertise or get into social media. But DAW and Tor books and these
DAW,
yeah, they're huge, and they come up in all the awards. Like you never see a Nebula Award given to a small publisher or a small writer from an unknown region of the world. So it's the industry is very tight. I did talk to SFWA about how can I become a kind of member, and they have some very strict guidelines. I went to them. I talked to them in Chengdu when I went to the Worldcon. I talked to them again last year in Seattle. They have these guidelines that if you want to become like a member, you need to show sales for your books of I don't know, 1,500 something books that are being sold, or the amount of money, the transactions and stuff. And I cannot ever show them that because, well, I'm from sanctioned country, first of all. It doesn't matter whatever you sell back in Iran doesn't count here when you kind of the money when you count the exchange rate and stuff, it just doesn't really matter. So it's kind of impossible for writers to get into these awards, like to even be considered for them.
Could I try to put in something here? I think that's something for their business meeting. And we could try to talk to people who are already in SFWA to make a different category for people who are from sanctioned, they need to do that, but that would be handled in their business meeting. So if you know anyone, anybody at this meeting, if you know anybody who's an SFWA, I'll keep that in mind if I talk to any that are in, they could do that. We can't do it from the outside, but they could do that and say, hey, you need a different category for people that are just the average amount of competition for people who are handicapped in that way.
Yeah.
Okay, well, do you see Starlet Swan may have a question for you there. Starlet?
Yes. One book that I'm reading now, and it's a fantasy book, but the thing is that it's an anthology of different short stories and authors. It's called The Book of Witches. And the thing is that it's from all over the world.
Hmm.
You have Africans, Asians, it's Americans. It's a beautiful book. And it's actually published by HarperCollins.
Mhm.
And the imprint is Harper Voyager. So I know this is not specifically a speculative or sci-fi, but I thought I would bring this up because there's some that
Mhm.
do publish people
Good,
from all over the world.
good to know. And I think on that note, I'm going to have to call this a halt because we get really a huge file that I have to try to put up and in. So folks, I will try to get to this and publish our meeting on YouTube, and it is at the Hard Science Fiction channel. So I'm not able to switch back and forth, but just go into YouTube and you will find this recorded meeting at the Hard Science Fiction channel. And I want to thank everyone, especially
Thank you. It was great meeting
Layla
everyone.
Goushey and our writer who was the subject of the talk, Zoha Kazemi. I hope that's right. Thank you, everyone. And I'm going to say bye-bye for now. Oh, and don't forget, next month, let me see. Hold on just a second. Next month in August, I have to go to my little book, my little old-fashioned tiny book, Nancy Kress. And I believe Nancy's from Cambridge, and she's going to be talking about combining science and new discoveries with fiction and the way she does it in her classes at Cambridge. So try to join us next time for Nancy Kress. See you later.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're
Bye.
very, bye-bye.